What you're about to see will shatter everything you think you know about loyalty. A sick German shepherd, barely able to stand, gets struck by his own trainer, but his response? Nobody could have predicted this heart-stopping act of devotion. This isn't just about abuse, this is about a dying dog's soul being tested in the most unthinkable way. When pain meets loyalty, which one wins? The answer will leave you speechless. By the end of this story, you'll understand why this moment went viral across the globe. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you see the bond between humans and animals forever. Rex's story begins in a place where hope goes to die. Picture this, a 7-year-old German shepherd whose powerful frame had become a prison of pain. Hip dysplasia, that cruel thief of mobility, had transformed what should have been graceful strides into labored, shuffling steps. Each movement sent shockwaves through joints that ground together like broken glass. His once magnificent coat, thick and lustrous as golden wheat, now hung in matted clumps against protruding ribs. You could count every bone beneath that dull, lifeless fur. Chronic illness had carved hollows into his face, transforming proud cheekbones into sharp ridges that spoke of hunger and neglect. But here's what will break your heart, those eyes. Once bright amber, fierce with intelligence and purpose, they had faded to a cloudy yellow-brown. Not from blindness, but from something far worse. From the slow extinguishing of spirit that happens when pain becomes your constant companion. When every breath is effort. When standing upright feels like climbing mountains. Yet every single morning, and this is where Rex's story becomes impossible to forget, every single morning when footsteps echoed across that concrete floor, Rex's tail would lift. Not the powerful, confident wag of his younger days, but a trembling flutter. A desperate whisper of hope. Because Rex still believed. Even as his body betrayed him, even as strength leaked from his muscles like water from a broken vessel, he still believed that today might be different. Today might bring kindness. Today might bring the connection he craved more than food, more than comfort, more than relief from pain. The trainer would approach, and Rex would struggle to his feet. Those back legs, once capable of clearing 6-foot barriers, would shake with the effort. His breathing would become labored. But he would stand. He would try. Because in Rex's world, trying was love, and love was everything. This had been their ritual for 3 long years. 3 years since Rex had arrived as a 4-year-old with fire in his belly and loyalty in his DNA. Back then, his eagerness to please had been legendary. Sit, and Rex would drop so fast his haunches would slide on smooth floors. Stay, and Rex would remain frozen like a statue while chaos erupted around him. Protect, and Rex would position himself between his handler and any perceived threat, hackles raised, every muscle coiled with purpose. Those early days had been magic. Rex lived for the sharp whistle that meant attention. His ears would prick forward, alert as satellite dishes. His whole body would vibrate with anticipation. Commands weren't just instructions, they were opportunities to prove his worth, to earn that split second of approval that made everything worthwhile. Training sessions had been Rex's church. The repetition, the precision, the moment when human and animal minds clicked together in perfect understanding. This was what he was born for. German shepherds don't just work, they worship through work. And Rex had been a devoted believer. But here's the tragedy that no one talks about. Animals don't understand decline the way humans do. They don't see the big picture of disease progression or joint deterioration. All Rex knew was that somehow, day by day, he was failing the thing he loved most. Commands that once came naturally now felt impossible. His body wouldn't cooperate. His legs wouldn't hold. His mind remained sharp, screaming instructions that his muscles couldn't follow. The frustration must have been maddening, like being trapped in a stranger's failing body while your soul stayed young and eager. And still, Rex never stopped trying. Even as his health declined, even as those rare moments of approval became fewer and farther between, his devotion never wavered. He would push through pain for a chance at connection. Drag himself upright for the possibility of purpose. Those fleeting pats on the head, maybe once a week, maybe less, became the light that sustained him through endless hours of aching joints and exhausted breathing. His tail would wag so hard his whole back end would wiggle, and for just a moment, the pain would disappear. For just a moment, he was still the dog he used to be. But pain has a way of testing everyone's limits. And patience, even in the kindest hearts, can wear thin. Rex couldn't know that his visible decline was becoming a mirror, reflecting back every training session that fell short, every goal unmet, every expectation unmatched. He couldn't understand that his weakness was being seen as failure rather than the inevitable result of time and genetics and a body that had given everything it had to give. All Rex knew was that something was shifting. The air felt different on this particular morning. Tension crackled like electricity before a storm. His handler's footsteps carried a weight that made Rex's stomach clench with worry he couldn't name. The usual morning ritual began, but nothing felt right. Commands came sharper, expectations felt heavier. Rex's legs trembled more than usual as he struggled to perform movements that had once been second nature. His breathing came in quick, anxious pants. And then, in a moment that would change everything, Rex saw something in his handler's eyes that made his heart sink like a stone dropped in dark water. Something cold. Something final. Something that whispered, "Today, trying might not be enough." What happened next would test every fiber of loyalty that ran through Rex's weary bones. It would reveal just how deep unconditional love could go, and whether devotion could survive when the very person you trusted most became the source of your greatest fear. The question that hung in the air like smoke was simple but terrifying. What happens when love meets its breaking point? Rex was about to find out. The training session began like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. From the first command, everything felt wrong. The concrete floor seemed colder beneath Rex's paws. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with an electric tension that made the air itself feel dangerous. Rex's handler stood differently today, shoulders rigid, jaw clenched, fingers drumming against his thigh in sharp, impatient beats. "Sit." The command cracked through the air like a whip. Rex tried. God, how he tried. His haunches began to lower, but halfway down, his back legs betrayed him. They buckled sideways, sending him stumbling against a metal training barrier with a hollow clang that echoed through the facility like a death knell. The sound made Rex's heart race. He scrambled to recover, paws scraping desperately against the smooth concrete, but his body wouldn't cooperate. His legs shook like branches in a hurricane, not from cold, but from the crushing weight of his own failing strength. "Sit." Louder this time. Sharper. Rex's brown eyes darted to his handler's face, searching for understanding, for patience, for that flicker of compassion he'd seen before. But all he found was a storm brewing behind cold, unforgiving eyes. The man's breathing had changed, shorter, angrier. His hands had curled into fists. This was fear. Raw, primal fear coursing through Rex's veins like ice water. But here's what makes this story impossible to forget. Rex didn't run. Any rational creature would have backed away from the growing threat. Would have sought safety, distance, escape. But Rex pressed forward on trembling legs, his tail tucked low, his body language screaming submission and apology. Because in Rex's world, the solution to disappointing someone you loved wasn't distance, it was getting closer. Trying harder. Proving your devotion even when your body screamed in protest. Down. The trainer's voice had transformed into something Rex had never heard before. Something that made his stomach clench with terror. Rex attempted to drop to the ground, but his front legs gave out too quickly. He collapsed in a heap, his chin hitting the concrete with a sickening thud that sent shockwaves through his already aching skull. A small whimper escaped his throat, not from physical pain, but from the emotional agony of failing again. The trainer's patience shattered like glass hitting pavement. "What is wrong with you?" The words came out in a roar that bounced off the walls and crashed back down on Rex like falling rocks. 3 years of training and you can't even sit properly. Rex's whole body began to shake, not just his legs now, but every inch of him. His ears flattened against his skull. His breathing became rapid, panicked gasps. But still, impossibly, his eyes remained fixed on his trainer's face with desperate, unwavering attention. He was waiting. Still hoping. Still believing that somehow, some way, he could fix this. And that's when the unthinkable happened. The blow came swift and brutal, a harsh strike across Rex's weakened frame that sent him sprawling sideways. The sound of hand meeting flesh and fur echoed through the training facility like a gunshot. Rex's ribs, already prominent from illness and malnutrition, absorbed the impact with a hollow thump that made witnesses wince. Any other dog would have snapped. Would have bared teeth, grown defensive, fought back with the fury of cornered prey. Survival instinct should have kicked in like a roaring engine, demanding self-preservation above all else. But Rex? Rex did something that stunned every single person watching. He pressed closer. Against every natural impulse, against every screaming nerve in his battered body, Rex dragged himself toward his attacker. His movements were slow, painful, deliberate. Like a pilgrim crawling toward a shrine. His eyes, those cloudy, pain-filled eyes, looked up at his trainer with an expression that shattered hearts. It wasn't fear staring back. It wasn't anger or betrayal or the wild desperation of an animal under attack. It was love. Pure, devastating, impossible love. His gaze seemed to ask the most heartbreaking question imaginable. What did I do wrong? How can I make you happy again? Please, just tell me what you need me to be. The trainer's hand froze midair, trembling with rage and something else, something that looked dangerously close to shame. Around the room, witnesses held their collective breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. Animals didn't respond to violence with devotion. They didn't offer forgiveness to those who hurt them. But Rex wasn't just any animal. His front paw lifted slowly, shakily, and reached toward his trainer's leg. The same gesture he'd learned as a young puppy, the universal sign of please notice me, please accept me, please love me. It was simultaneously the most beautiful and most devastating thing anyone had ever seen. The trainer stared down at this broken, loyal creature pressing against his leg, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Doubt. Recognition. The dawning realization of what he was doing to a soul that had never given him anything but devotion. But rage is a powerful drug, and withdrawal is brutal. His hand raised again, higher this time, with more force behind it. The threat hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. Rex could see it coming. Could feel death itself hovering in that raised fist. And still, he didn't move away. This was it, the point of no return. The moment when every witness in that room understood they were about to see something that would change them forever. Would Rex's survival instinct finally kick in? Would self-preservation override 3 years of unconditional loyalty? Or would love prove stronger than fear, even when that love was met with violence? The trainer's muscles tensed. Rex's eyes never wavered from his face, still full of that impossible, heartbreaking devotion. What happened next would redefine everything anyone thought they knew about the power of unconditional love. Time stopped. In that suspended moment between rage and revelation, between raised fist and inevitable impact, Rex did something that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives. Instead of cowering, instead of bracing for the blow that was surely coming, this broken, sick dog slowly, impossibly slowly, lifted his trembling front paw. His movements were deliberate, gentle, filled with a kind of sacred reverence that made the air itself hold its breath. He placed that paw on his trainer's leg. Not in defense. Not in desperation. But in the exact same gesture he'd learned as a tiny puppy, the universal canine sign of connection, of trust, of please see me. The same movement that had once earned him treats and belly rubs and those precious moments of approval he lived for. A collective gasp rippled through the training facility like a shockwave. The veterinarian who had been observing from the corner felt her clipboard slip from numb fingers. It clattered to the floor, the sound sharp as breaking glass in the stunned silence. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. In 23 years of working with animals, she had never seen anything like this. The facility manager, a hardened man who'd witnessed countless training sessions, found himself gripping the doorframe for support. His knuckles went white. His breathing became shallow, ragged. Because what he was seeing defied every law of animal behavior he thought he understood. But it was the animal control officer who had the most devastating reaction. This woman had seen abuse in every form imaginable. Had rescued dogs from fighting rings, from hoarding situations, from neglect so severe it bordered on torture. She thought she was immune to shock. She was wrong. Tears began streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. Because in that single, gentle gesture from Rex's paw, she recognized something that made her heart crack wide open. Forgiveness in its purest form. Rex wasn't trying to stop the violence. He was trying to heal it. His cloudy eyes, those windows to a soul that had endured too much, looked up at his trainer with an expression that would be burned into memory forever. There was no fear in those depths. No anger, no resentment, no survival instinct demanding self-preservation. There was only love. Devastating, impossible, unconditional love. His gaze seemed to whisper the most heartbreaking message imaginable. I'm sorry I disappointed you. I'm sorry my body is failing. I'm sorry I can't be the dog you need me to be. But I still believe in you. I still trust you. I still love you with every broken piece of my heart." The trainer's raised hand began to shake. Not with rage now, but with something far more powerful, the weight of recognition. Of seeing himself reflected in the eyes of a creature whose devotion had never wavered, not once, not even in the face of violence. His fist unclenched slowly, finger by finger, like a flower opening to sunlight. His arm dropped to his side as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. And then something happened that no one in that room expected. He began to cry. Not the angry tears of frustration or the bitter tears of defeat. These were the deep, soul-shaking sobs of a man suddenly seeing the monster he'd become. Of recognizing the saint he'd been tormenting. Of understanding that for 3 years, he'd been the recipient of a love so pure it belonged in stained glass windows and holy books. The veterinarian found her voice first, though it came out as barely a whisper. My God. His comforting him. Because that's exactly what Rex was doing. As his trainer crumbled under the weight of his own actions, Rex pressed closer still. His skeletal frame, ravaged by illness and neglect, somehow found the strength to offer support. His muzzle nudged against the man's leg in the gentlest possible way, not seeking attention, but giving comfort. Rex was taking care of the person who had just struck him. The facility manager's voice cracked as he spoke into his radio. Cancel the removal order. Cancel everything. He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't find words for what he was witnessing. Because this wasn't just an animal responding to abuse. This was something sacred. Something that revealed truths about love and forgiveness that most humans spend lifetimes trying to understand. Rex was teaching a masterclass in grace, and everyone in that room was his student. The animal control officer stepped forward on unsteady legs, her professional composure completely shattered. She'd come here to document abuse, to build a case, to remove an animal from danger. But what she found instead was a living, breathing example of everything good that still existed in this broken world. This dog, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, this dog is an angel. And in that moment, as Rex continued to offer comfort to the very person who had caused him pain, everyone understood that they weren't just witnessing an animal's response to trauma. They were witnessing the closest thing to divine love that walks on 4 legs. Rex had been protecting something all along, not his own safety, but his trainer's soul. Refusing to let violence win. Refusing to let anger poison the bond they'd shared. Choosing forgiveness over fury, love over survival, hope over despair. The trainer dropped to his knees, his hands shaking as they reached toward Rex. For the first time in months, his touch was gentle. Reverent. Like he was touching something holy, which, in that moment, he absolutely was. Rex leaned into that touch with a soft sigh that seemed to carry 3 years of waiting, 3 years of hoping, 3 years of loving someone who had forgotten how to love him back. The truth hit everyone in that room like lightning. They weren't witnessing tragedy anymore. They were witnessing resurrection. And it came on 4 legs, with a tail that finally began to wag. And then, like dawn breaking after the longest night, everything changed. The trainer's knees hit the concrete floor with a sound that echoed through the facility like a prayer being answered. His face, twisted with rage just moments before, had transformed into something unrecognizable, raw vulnerability, overwhelming shame, and the dawning recognition of what he'd almost destroyed. Rex, he whispered, the name breaking apart in his throat like glass. Oh God, Rex, what have I done? His hands reached out slowly, trembling with the weight of 3 years' worth of missed opportunities for kindness. For the first time in months, maybe years, his touch was gentle when it found Rex's matted fur. Reverent, like he was touching something sacred. Because he was. Rex responded the way he'd been responding all along, with love that defied logic. Despite his frail condition, despite the pain radiating through his arthritic joints, despite every reason to fear those same hands that had just struck him, Rex moved closer. His skeletal frame pressed against his trainer's chest, and a sound escaped him that made every witness's heart clench. A soft whimper. Not of pain, but of relief. Finally, the connection he'd been craving was here. The animal control officer watched this reunion through a blur of tears she didn't bother to wipe away. In her 15 years of rescue work, she'd seen animals forgive before, it was part of their nature. But this was different. This was Rex actively comforting the person who had caused him suffering, as if to say, "It's okay. I understand. We're okay now." The veterinarian found herself whispering a prayer she hadn't spoken since childhood, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles went white. Because what she was witnessing felt like witnessing a miracle, the kind that reminded you why you believed in goodness in the first place. But it was the facility manager who understood the true magnitude of what had just unfolded. He'd been in the business of training animals for over 2 decades, had seen every possible combination of human and animal interaction. Yet nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this moment of pure, unconditional forgiveness playing out before his eyes. "This changes everything," he said, his voice barely audible. "This changes how I see everything." The trainer's sobs came in waves now, each one washing away years of hardened callousness, years of treating Rex as equipment rather than a soul. His arms wrapped around the fragile dog with the desperate care of someone who had almost lost something irreplaceable. "I'm sorry," he kept repeating, the words tumbling out between gasps. "I'm so sorry, boy. You deserved better. You deserved so much better." Rex's tail, that nearly motionless appendage that had carried hope through the darkest times, began to move. Not the powerful wag of his younger days, but something softer, more profound. A gentle swish that seemed to sweep away all the pain, all the anger, all the mistakes that had brought them to this moment. The rescue workers who had arrived expecting to document abuse found themselves documenting something else entirely. The moment when love proved itself stronger than every force that had tried to destroy it. Now, let the pace slow. Let the emotions settle like dust after a storm. Because what happened in that training facility wasn't just about one sick dog and one broken man. It was about something deeper, something that touches the core of what it means to love without conditions. This wasn't survival instinct driving Rex's behavior. Animals operating on pure survival don't press closer to threats, they flee. They hide. They protect themselves above all else. This wasn't Stockholm Syndrome either, that psychological response to captivity that creates false bonds. Rex had known kindness once, had experienced genuine care, had felt real love. He knew the difference between authentic connection and manufactured dependence. No, what Rex demonstrated was something far rarer and infinitely more powerful, the capacity to love not because of how he was treated, but because of who he fundamentally was. His loyalty didn't depend on reciprocation. His devotion wasn't contingent on kindness. His love existed as a force unto itself, unshakable and pure. Rex loved because that's who he was. In his essence, in his DNA, in his very soul, he was a creature designed for devotion. His illness couldn't take that away. The arthritis that stole his mobility, the chronic conditions that ravaged his strength, the malnutrition that carved hollows into his face, none of it could touch the part of him that chose love over everything else. His mistreatment couldn't break it. The harsh words, the growing impatience, the escalating anger that culminated in violence, all of it bounced off Rex's capacity for forgiveness like stones thrown at an ocean. Because true love, the kind that Rex embodied, doesn't ask for anything in return. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't withdraw when times get hard. It doesn't diminish when it's not reciprocated. It simply is. Within hours, Rex was in the hands of emergency veterinarians who worked with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for human patients. For fluids flowed into his dehydrated body. Pain medication eased joints that had ached for months. Antibiotics began fighting infections that had gone untreated for too long. But the most important healing had already begun in that concrete-floored training facility, in the moment when Rex chose love over survival, forgiveness over fear. Today, 6 months later, Rex lives in a foster home where morning sunlight streams through wide windows onto soft beds that smell like lavender fabric softener instead of industrial disinfectant. His new humans speak in gentle voices that never carry threats. Their hands offer only kindness. Rex still moves slowly. Age and illness have claimed that from him permanently. But his eyes have regained something that no medical treatment could restore, the bright spark of a dog who knows he is loved. His story spread far beyond that training facility, far beyond his rescue, far beyond the immediate circle of people who witnessed his remarkable display of grace. It became a beacon, proof that unconditional love isn't just a beautiful concept spoken about in poetry and songs. It's real. It walks among us on 4 legs, with a gentle spirit and a tail that wags for joy. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, It teaches us what love actually looks like. Rex's story doesn't end with his rescue. It begins there. Because what happened in that concrete training facility on a cold Tuesday morning became something much larger than one sick dog and one transformed man. It became a mirror held up to humanity itself, reflecting back truths we'd forgotten in our rush through modern life. Sometimes, and this is what Rex taught a world desperately in need of the lesson, sometimes the greatest acts of love don't come from poets or philosophers or spiritual leaders. They don't come wrapped in beautiful words or grand gestures. They don't come from creatures who can reason through the mathematics of reciprocity or weigh the benefits of forgiveness. Sometimes the greatest acts of love come on four legs. They come from hearts that beat with a purity we've lost somewhere along the way. Hearts that don't calculate cost or measure returns. Hearts that choose devotion not because it makes sense, but because it's simply who they are. In our broken world, a world where trust feels dangerous, where vulnerability is weakness, where love often comes with conditions and expiration dates, animals like Rex stand as living reminders of something we thought was extinct: unconditional love in its truest form. Rex didn't love his trainer because of what he received. He loved despite what he didn't receive. He loved through pain, through neglect, through moments when love seemed like the most foolish choice possible. He loved not because it was smart or safe or guaranteed to be returned. He loved because that's what love looks like when it's pure. And here's what makes his story even more extraordinary: Rex isn't unique. Right now, in homes and shelters and rescues around the world, there are thousands of animals demonstrating this same impossible devotion. Dogs who forgive owners who abandon them. Cats who comfort children through nightmares. Horses who carry riders despite old injuries. Birds who sing to lonely hearts. Every single day, animals are writing love letters to humanity with their actions, their loyalty, their willingness to trust again and again, no matter how many times that trust has been broken. But here's the question that matters: are we listening? Rex's story went viral because it reminded people of something essential that we'd almost forgotten: that loyalty isn't transactional, devotion isn't conditional, and love doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it just is, existing as a force more powerful than logic, more enduring than circumstance, more healing than any medicine. The trainer who struck Rex? He adopted him the day he was released from veterinary care. Their relationship now is everything it should have been from the beginning, built on respect, gentleness, and the kind of gratitude that comes from nearly losing something irreplaceable. Rex, despite everything he endured, sleeps curled up next to the man who once raised a hand against him. Because forgiveness, when it's genuine, has the power to transform both the forgiver and the forgiven. That veterinarian who dropped her clipboard in shock? She changed her entire practice philosophy that day, treating every animal not just as a patient, but as a teacher with lessons about love that humans desperately need to learn. The animal control officer who couldn't stop crying? She founded a rescue specifically for animals who've endured abuse, naming it Rex's Legacy and dedicating her life to proving that broken trust can be rebuilt, that wounded hearts can heal, that love really can triumph over everything that tries to destroy it. The facility manager who witnessed the miracle? He revolutionized his training methods, building programs based on positive reinforcement and mutual respect, ensuring that no other animal would endure what Rex endured on his watch. One dog's choice to love instead of hate created ripples that are still spreading, still transforming lives, still proving that sometimes the smallest acts of grace can change the entire world. But the most important part of Rex's legacy isn't what he did for those specific people in that specific moment. It's what he continues to do for everyone who hears his story. Because in learning about Rex's impossible choice to forgive, people remember their own capacity for forgiveness. In seeing his refusal to let pain poison love, they find strength to choose love in their own broken places. Rex became a bridge between the world as it is and the world as it could be, a world where loyalty isn't rare, where devotion isn't foolish, where love doesn't come with terms and conditions. Now it's your turn to be part of that legacy. In the comments below, share the story that moved you most. What's the most incredible act of loyalty you've ever witnessed from an animal? Was it a dog who refused to leave a sick owner's bedside? A cat who somehow found its way home across impossible distances? A horse who protected a fallen rider? A bird who mourned a lost companion? These stories matter more than you might realize. They're not just heartwarming anecdotes, they're evidence. Proof that love in its purest form still exists, still chooses hope over despair, still believes in tomorrow even when today is filled with pain. Share your story because someone scrolling through these comments might need to read it. Someone might be losing faith in loyalty, in forgiveness, in the possibility that love can survive anything. Your story might be exactly what they need to believe again. And if Rex's journey touched something deep in your heart, if his story reminded you why the bond between humans and animals is sacred, then share this video with someone who needs that reminder too. Share it with the friend who's going through a difficult time. Share it with the family member who's lost faith in goodness. Share it with anyone who needs to see proof that love, real, unconditional, transformative love, still exists in this world. Subscribe not just for more stories, but to join a community that believes in the power of loyalty, the healing force of forgiveness, and the truth that sometimes our greatest teachers walk on four legs and love us with a purity that changes everything. Because Rex's story isn't really about a dog at all. It's about the love that exists in all of us, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be chosen, waiting to transform the world one heart at a time.